Welcome into another edition of Arkansas Recruiting. We are on the phone with our Otis Kirk to get the latest football news, and we're going to start with a commitment, Otis, from an in-state kid, a tight end, and Dax Courtney committing to Arkansas on Saturday.
Yeah, and that was a big pickup for the Razorbacks. Dax is a kid that I was at a combine in Benton 3 years ago, Alyssa, and his dad, Mark, I've known for years. Used to be the coach at Dumas, Coach Will Gregg, for instance. But Mark told me then, he had an older son that was a quarterback that was at that combine. He said, I've got a son, young son, that's going to be a Razorback one of these days, going to be a big-time prospect. And he was right. It's Dax Courtney. And I think if my math is right, Dax would have been in the 7th grade going into the 8th then. And Mark already knew he was going to be big-time. He had 36 catches, 623 yards, 7 touchdowns as a sophomore. He had offers to Penn State, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Michigan State, Kansas State, Kansas, TCU, Baylor, and a lot more. But those are the Power 5. Well, Purdue, too. Purdue also. Those are the Power 5 offers. And he had a bunch of other offers like Texas San Antonio, Florida International. Very good player. Can dunk a basketball with both hands. Just very athletic. He can just stand and then jump and dunk a basketball. 6'6", 210. He'll put on weight. Some people talking about the weight, but I mean, he's in the 10th grade. So, I mean, we're going to the 11th now, but he is exactly what you need. You had Aaron Outley. You got him committed in 2021. You've got Courtney in 2022. Then you've got Shamar Easter coming up maxed down in 2023. So there's a run on tight ends in the state of Arkansas. And we're not talking about average tight ends. We're talking about some big-time players. So it's a position where Arkansas needs that. But Dax was a great pickup for the Razorbacks. He had tossed around. He even told me he thought about not going to Arkansas, but then he said that was dumb. He said, you go to Arkansas if you're from the state. And he's going to be a good representative for the state and the University of Arkansas and DeWitt, Alyssa. So that was a great pickup for Sam Pittman.
All right, moving on with the class of 2021, a punter in Patrick Foley. He got an offer this past week.
Yeah, Scott Fountain is really doing a good job evaluating these kids. This is a kid that he kicks also. I mean, he's not a bad kicker, but he's not in Cameron. He's not in Cameron Little's class, I guess is what I'm trying to say. He was 21 of 21 on PATs and 7 field goals in 7 attempts with a long of 40. He kicks off. He does it all for Omaha Creek Prep, but he's looking at Arkansas. Arkansas is looking at him as a punter. Jamie has him rated as a 5-star punter, which in a 4.5 kicker. Jamie Cole, obviously, is who I'm talking about, has him rated as a 5-star punter and a 4.5-star kicker. So he told me something interesting too, Alyssa. He told me that Cameron Little will be the best kicker in college football when he's at Arkansas. These kids go to these same kicking camps and stuff, and they compete against each other. He told me Cameron Little is a great kicker, and I noticed Cameron the other night when Patrick announced his offer to Arkansas, Cameron came on there and was retweeting and making some comments about it. So they know each other, been good chemistry, and that way, Scott can bring in field goal kicker, and punter all in the same class if by chance they get him. And but he's got a strong leg. He's a very good punter and someone that. I ask these kids that are kickers and punters what it means to them that Scott Fountain is an on-field coach, one of the 10 on-field coaches. Because, every school doesn't use one of their 10 spots for a specialist coach, and that has really helped Arkansas with these kids here, like Little and so Foley. So it's helped them with both those guys, and it's going to help them in the future, too.
You love seeing that impact. All right, lastly, a guy that we're going to talk about here, Curly Thomas IV. He's a defensive end, class of 2022. He lives in Fort Worth, but you tell me he was born in Pine Bluff.
He was. He's still got family in the state of Arkansas. This is his birth state. I mean, that means a lot to this kid, and he's a very good defensive end. I watched his tape. He gets off blocks extremely well. He maintains, he doesn't get whipped. I didn't see him get whipped. I know it's a highlight tape. I get that. And they're not going to put a lot of bad plays on there. But on his highlight tape, he manages to get off of blocks. He sheds blocks. and gets in and makes the tackle. He can get them in the backfield, even downfield. I really like him because what I like about him, he has a motor. He never gives up on defense, and that's important. It's important for any player not to give up on a play, but I think you've got to have a motor on defense and be aggressive. If you're not, you're defeating the purpose. Last year he had 42 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and forced a fumble. And he's got schools such as Baylor, Oklahoma State, Syracuse, Kansas, Houston, Cincinnati, and other schools after him and offering him in addition to the Razorbacks. So it's a player to keep an eye on, because even though he's 2022, I think he's someone that could end up at Arkansas, because he really emphasized what it meant to get an offer from his first state school.
First, really now continuing to focus on recruiting, but we heard from Sam Pittman earlier in the week on Thursday, and he talked about recruiting, and this dead period keeps getting pushed back and back as the football season for the SEC is getting pushed back, and he made some comments about that. What did you think about what Sam said about it?
Well, I like it because we talked about that to a degree on here last Sunday, to a little bit lesser degree, but we talked about that, about the unknown, because he talked about the surprises. He called them surprises. I think I was calling them unknowns, but it's the same thing. I mean, they're getting kids that they haven't seen in person. They're going off of highlight tape, and and he made an interesting point. Some kids are better off highlight tape. Some kids are not as good. Some kids are the same, but you'd like to have them at camp so you can get an eyeball on. So many times kids show up, they're 6'3", 6'4" on tape. They get here on height, recruiting height. They get here and they're 6'1" or 6 foot. So you want to see them in person, and you're not getting to know the kid. You're just, I mean, you can exchange social media messages with someone all day, but you still don't know his personality, his character and stuff. There's a lot of unknowns in this recruiting, and it's a level playing field. I'm not whining about Arkansas, Alyssa, because everyone's got the same thing. I mean, it's the same for all schools, so it's a level playing field. But I'm just saying, this is going to be a class probably like certainly like we've never seen before, and probably we'll never see again. It's going to be a lot of unknowns when they get to campus. Will there be a lot of kids transferring out quickly? Will schools regret very many of their offers and commitments? I mean, and signees. This story is going to be interesting to follow. We're not going to do it obviously every week, but in the future, it's going to be very interesting, because there's never been this much unknown in recruiting. Recruiting is, as Sam says, hard enough anyway. But when you can't go out and see them, and they can't come and see you, and you're simply recruiting off of tapes and visits, it's just a lot of unknowns, and it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, it's that COVID-19 ripple effect, Otis. It definitely is going to impact a lot more than we ever really anticipated. We appreciate your time once again every week talking recruiting and the latest football recruiting news. Otis, thanks so much for the time. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Liz.